speaking of luxury and paying to pay or paying to play, let's talk about earn your leisure. So recently on Earn Your Leisure, there was a conversation about Black luxury has outpaced Black income. And so basically what they're saying that back in the day, we had a certain level of what we thought was luxury. So in the 90s and whatnot, was it Infinity 45 was considered, 245 was considered a great car that Nas, as his example, aspired to get. And now, though, it's a Maybach or somewhere along those lines. That, but at the same time, our economics, our income has not equated to actually be Black luxury. And so, my question to you all, one, is this an issue in our community? Do we acknowledge that this is an issue in our community? And if so, why do you believe it's an issue in our community? And why do we chase this luxury instead of assets?
It's like at school with the uniforms. Everybody has a uniform on, right? Everybody's dressed the same. Now, some little girl's got to have a bow in her hair. It's a different color. Or if it's blue bows, now she got to have the blue and white bows. Or her shoe got to have a little something. Everybody wants a little sparkle. They want a little something different. Particularly when everybody looks around and notices that most of us, or most of the people in their same area, have about the same amount of stuff, right? So we start chasing this thing. Now, it used to be, though, that I think luxury was a show of your accomplishment. I mean, I got my money such that I've handled my business and now I can afford to have this kind of shirt, this kind of car, live in this kind of place, right? Because I've handled my business. And the reason you'd want this kind of shirt, this kind of house, this kind of place, because the idea was that you were now getting better quality that would last longer, right? You were moved up another level or whatever. But now we're at the point where we'll buy knockoffs just so we can look like we got it and we know we broke, which is kind of weird, right? Because we still didn't handle our business and we looking like we got money that we don't have. Uh, so I think it's funny in economics. When I went to school for economics, one of the things they said was it doesn't matter how much money somebody makes until they have the adequate spending habits, right? Like recycling the dollar in the community or whatever. Until they have the right spending habits, nothing changes, right? You can get more money, they'll still go broke. So we used to chase assets. We were on that at one point in time. Now we chasing like just what things look like, people's height, the aesthetics. What you know what I mean? We flexing Maybachs and Hermes and stuff, and our bank accounts is being on zero.
I think Black people, we've been chasing status for a long time, right? Because for a long time we weren't allowed. And I think for the people who had, it became a measurement of success of the things that we had accomplished, right? I think it's grown over access, over resources, over time, right? That Black people have started buying things that were outside of their means, right? Literally, some of these systems are created to put us in that box, like Lil Way, right? Yes, it helps a lot of people, but it also gives people to buy things that they can't afford. The extension of credit, it puts people in a momentary bliss because they can buy something, but if they can't afford it and they can't afford to pay for it, then it puts them in financial debt, right? And so there's these measures that I think that we want to look and appear to be better off than we are because we want to keep up with the Joneses. And I think yes, we've definitely status and all of that has definitely lapped some economics for Black people. And so I think it's normal to think that we overspend, we under budget, and a lot of us are wearing knockoffs anyway. Like we may think that that's a $500 purse, but that's really $40 from somebody at the flea market, and the world will never know. I respect people who get it that way as opposed to go out and spend $17,000 on a Birkin bag, but you stand and I've seen Maybachs and Bentleys in Section 8 housing, no lie. Like there's just there's something wrong with thinking that you can have one and then be at such a deficit at the rest of your life. Clothes, shoes, cars should not be the things that identify what success looks like for you, right? So I think that Black people have been just kind of caught up in a cycle of misspending for years, but I think it was also purposeful.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, the joke was, when I was, getting right out of college, it was, if your car note was more than your rent, you're messing up. You're doing something wrong. I think a lot of it, especially, social media has exacerbated it. Somebody's lying. And I looked it up. I like to have my numbers in front of me. According to the Census Bureau, the median black man makes $50,000 a year. That's his median income. For Black women, it's 44,000. But if you look on the gram, a lot of times you see people, Turks and Caicos, doing all kind of trips, Sunday fun day every weekend, got the red bottoms, they probably painted on, but whatever, so somebody's lying. It's either debt, maybe scamming, you're getting the money some other kind of way. So it's all for liability. It's no asset. So I don't think it's even that we don't have the money. It's just we spend it on dumb shit. So it's flossing really for people who probably don't like you anyway, and they're broke too. Why you fall just going into debt to impress broke people? That's crazy. We need to do better.
So hold on, you said, Delvin, that it's not that we don't have it, because I'm gonna tell you, my brother, we ain't got it.
Some
We ain't
have it.
got it, fam.
Well,
I hate to
it's
tell
more
you.
of a. I mean that what I'm trying to say is like managing what you do have is really important. So
Yes,
yeah,
I do agree with that, right?
yeah,
But I feel like the crux of what we're talking about is the gap widening in regards to aspiration, right?
yes,
Because back in the 90s, when we're looking at the Q45, I think reasonably that was still aspirational for a lot of people,
maybe
right?
Alexis.
And now we're talking about Hermes and Maybach, things that are not generally going to be affordable for most people, but it's thrown in our faces. Why is that? I think a lot of it, unfortunately, is technology, the access to social media, for example, right? Growing up around our age, there were certain things that if we didn't go to the mall, right? Like, how were we hearing about it? Maybe in songs, right? There was a period where hip hop became very name brand or gear oriented to a certain extent. We went through different phases, right? And I think as hip hop grew, as people who made money through hip hop continue to make more money, we have a billionaire like Jay-Z. So the aspiration, I think, low key did grow with the heroes that we saw, like in the culture, for example, right? So when Nas was talking about the Q45, he was talking about it from a street nigga perspective, right? But now we see Jay-Z in private planes and being able to talk about having basque yachts and shit like that. So what became, I think, seemingly attainable for us also grew as the culture grew, as the enterprise of hip hop grew, and as certain people achieved more wealth. I think the danger, though, unfortunately, is that people use that as a standard, as opposed to what it's always been intended for, which is an aspiration, something that you can shoot for, that if you put the work in, maybe if you shoot for the stars, you won't land there, but you'll get somewhere close enough to where you have a great life regardless, right? I think that's how it's intended. But the problem is, I think that a lot of people have set this as a baseline for their expectations, especially when you talk about just life in general. Like, this conversation's about whether or not a 9 to 5 is good enough for certain women or certain dating spaces, right? Or if he drives a Honda or drives a certain car. Like, these people's standards now are really putting, y'all want to talk about the height thing? I get it. But I do feel like it's a little different. But when you talk about like things like the kind of car a person drives, especially if it's paid for, depending, like, to me, that's when you should really start to see how lack of financially literate we are sometimes, because the woman or the guy who's driving a Honda may be doing so because they're saving and stacking their bread, investing accordingly. Those are the traits that we certainly should be looking for. But because we want to, the Jones have outpaced the rest of us and we're still trying to keep up with them, right? The whole keeping up with the Jones has always been a thing. But like, literally, when you talk about having billionaires, that wasn't always the case. For us, it was millionaires. Maybe the brother had 5 million, like, oh my God, that's amazing. Now brothers got billions or aspiring towards billions. So I think that's the core of it, that the people within the culture who have aspired towards great have reached higher heights. And then with the distribution of social media, making it seem as if everybody is reaching these higher heights as opposed to maybe renting it, you know what I'm saying, temporarily. You know what I mean? And so now that's added more pressure for us to then want to continue to be like a Jones. It becomes this repetitive algorithmic cycle that unfortunately you have to be woke, right? I hate to use that word, right? But you have to be aware of what's happening and fight against it, because I think in some way, shape, or form, many of us find ourselves being influenced by this idea that we're validated by our material possessions and the types of things that we can show on social media. And I think that's where the danger lies, not so much just in the aspiration, but rather how it shows up for real, and whether or not we're able to discern the reality from the charade or the facade that's out there through social media. So